You know what's wild? Just when everything seems to be going right, things can still take an unexpected turn. That's the nature of Formula One. It's full of highs, lows, and moments that hit harder than anyone expects. Lando Norris, despite all the progress he's made, still finds himself in the middle of one of those moments. There's no doubt that Lando Norris is one of the standout names in Formula One right now. With his skills behind the wheel and consistency on the track, he's earned his spot as a top-tier driver. McLaren clearly sees his value. They've signed him through the 2025 season and partnered him with Oscar Piastri starting in 2023. But here's where things get interesting. Norris had the chance to shift gears and head over to Red Bull, not once, but twice. The most recent came just before he renewed his contract with McLaren, back in 2019. Norris joined McLaren, stepping in after Fernando Alonso decided to take a break from the sport. He was teamed up with Carlos Sainz Jr. and came into the season with a lot of expectations. After all, he had just finished second in the Formula 2 championship, trailing only behind George Russell, another rising name who got into Formula 1 with Williams that same year. Interestingly, before this move to McLaren became official, there were serious conversations about Norris joining Toro Rosso, what we now know as AlphaTauri. Had Alonso stepped aside earlier and opened up a seat, Norris might have taken it, possibly replacing Brendan Hartley. That move would have placed him in a different setup altogether and could have changed the trajectory of his entire career. Now, imagine if that switch had happened. Norris could have ended up taking over Albon's seat in 2019, and when Red Bull decided to swap out Gasly for Albon midway through that same season, it could have been Norris instead, sitting next to Max Verstappen in the Red Bull garage. That's not just a small twist in the story, that could have completely changed the dynamics at the front of the grid. Christian Horner, the man in charge at Red Bull Racing, didn't stay quiet about this. He mentioned that Red Bull had spoken to Lando more than once over the years, but every single time they reached out, McLaren managed to get his signature right after. According to Horner, Norris always ended up signing a fresh deal with McLaren soon after any chat with Red Bull. That's how committed McLaren was to keeping their man, and how close? Norris came to wearing a different team's colors. Lando himself opened up about this in an interview with Automotor Undersport. He explained that yes, there were conversations with other teams from time to time. It's normal. Every driver wants to weigh their options, especially if winning races and titles is part of the goal. Talking to a team like Red Bull is tempting. They've been at the top for years, and anyone chasing success would take that offer seriously. But even with all that in mind, Norris still felt that McLaren had the better path for him. He said those talks weren't about making big changes. Right away it was more about keeping contact, understanding what possibilities might exist down the road. And it wasn't just Red Bull. Most drivers talk to multiple teams before contracts run out. It's how the game works behind the scenes. Looking at the bigger picture, it's clear that McLaren hasn't always given Norris a smooth ride. The team showed promise in 2020 and 2021, but by the time 2022 rolled around, things started to slip. The car just wasn't performing the way it should have, and Norris was pretty vocal about his frustration, especially after the race in Mexico. After that Grand Prix, he didn't hold back in criticizing the team for the strategy they gave him. According to Lando, they made the wrong tire call. What's more frustrating for him was that Daniel Ricciardo got the exact approach Norris had wanted, and it worked. Ricciardo ended up finishing P7, while Norris crossed the line in P10. That kind of misjudgment can really hurt team morale, especially when you're already fighting to stay competitive. Right now, McLaren is in a tough fight with Alpine for 4th place in the Constructors' Championship. But if we're being honest, the only reason they're still close to Alpine is because of Alpine's own reliability issues. Without that, the gap would be much wider. McLaren's car just hasn't been able to match up, and Norris has often been left trying to make the best out of a tough situation. Even with those setbacks, Norris has kept pushing. But it raises a big question. What if he had taken that Red Bull seat in 2019? If he had replaced Gasly and stayed in the Red Bull setup through the start of the 2021 season, would things look very different now? Could he have held on to that spot and pushed Max Verstappen harder than any of his other teammates? It's not an easy answer, but based on his track record, it's fair to say he might have. Lando Norris isn't just quick behind the wheel, he understands the car better than most. That deep awareness of what a car needs to perform at its best has made him stand out. Even when things weren't going well for McLaren, especially with the 2022 model, Norris managed to make the most of it. He consistently outpaced his teammate, Daniel Ricciardo, a driver with 8 wins and a solid reputation in Formula 1. That's not something many can claim, and it wasn't just close competition. Norris regularly outperformed Ricciardo in both qualifying and race pace throughout 2021 and 2022. While Ricciardo struggled to adapt the car's handling, Norris seemed to extract performance that the car didn't even look capable of. That's the mark of a top-tier driver, being able to push even a difficult car to its limit. In fact, in the 2022 season, Norris was the only driver not driving for Ferrari, Mercedes, or Red Bull to earn a podium finish. That alone shows how much of a difference he made in a team that clearly wasn't among the best at the time. McLaren, for most of that year, was more or less a one-man operation. It was Norris pulling them through tough weekends, earning the majority of the points, and keeping the fight alive against stronger midfield rivals like Alpine. Now, picture this. If he had been in a Red Bull, alongside Verstappen, how would that have turned out? Unlike other teammates who struggled to match Verstappen, Norris might have been a real challenge. His driving style, his technical feedback, and his ability to adapt quickly could have created a genuine battle within the team. It's not far-fetched to think it could have resembled what we saw between Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton at Mercedes a few years back. There's also an interesting technical side to this. Norris has often spoken about how much he dislikes cars with understeer, that feeling when the car resists turning into a corner. He prefers vehicles that are sharper in the front, even if that means the rear becomes more unstable. That's how he feels in control, when the car reacts to his inputs immediately, even if it slides a little more. In contrast, the McLaren MCL 3.6 didn't suit him well. It leaned towards understeer, something Norris found frustrating. He even mentioned how he kept trying to tweak the front wings and the mechanical setup just to get a better response. Still, the feeling didn't go away. This is where things get interesting. The Red Bull RB18, known for being an understeering car, might not have been ideal on paper, but with the right adjustments and support, Norris could have adapted. And with his technical feedback, Red Bull might have evolved the car to suit both drivers more effectively. All of this brings us to where things stand now. Norris is tied to McLaren until the end of the 2025 season, and he's shown loyalty to the team that gave him his start. Despite having had chances to leave, including talks with Red Bull, he chose to stay. Not just out of comfort, but because he believes in the project McLaren is building. He's said it himself. Being in a stable contract allows him to focus better, push harder, and feel more secure in his environment. While the idea of racing alongside Verstappen at Red Bull is intriguing, Norris has taken a different path. And who knows? If McLaren rises to the challenge in the next couple of seasons, his decision might just prove to be the right one. Could he have thrived at Red Bull? Maybe. But for now, Norris is determined to write his own story, one that could still end with victories and maybe even a title, right where it all began.